Okay. So, do we print out that? Bring that up today. Like here's an example. Like this is just one page of the city budget, right? So it talks about the power initiatives, how it affects our city's goals, and then the objectives for this particular budget. There's no like
Three ordinances.
and I wasn't gonna raise it for like today because
But now, the other thing I would get is I would make because that's a very good job.
yeah, I mean, when you look at every page of the city budget has information and also like the pages. Right?
Yeah, there you go. That's all you need.
It's general fund dollars.
That's all you need to know.
Good morning, supervisors and staff. Would you please press your ballot for roll call?
Did it do it? Yeah. Why doesn't it work? Do I do the A? I? Did.
Thank you. We have 21 present, and so we do have a quorum. And we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. After the Pledge of Allegiance, I would like you to please stand for a moment in silence for the veterans who have been lost and those that are still living. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Those supervisors or staff who have served our country, would you please stand? Just a reminder that this week being Veterans Week, if you have a green porch light or anything that's green on your porch to shine, you may do so in honor of all our veterans. It's kind of the green light week. So if you want to do that, that'd be just fine. All right, moving on to, I need a motion to approve the agenda. All right, I have a motion by Supervisor Booty and a second by Supervisor Irwin. There being no additions or corrections to that agenda, please vote your ballot. We have 21 yes, 0 no, 0 nay, 0 absent, so it has received the majority vote. Moving on, you have the minutes of the previous meeting. Are there any corrections or additions? All right, I have a motion by Supervisor Steer and a second by Supervisor Schwallenberg. Please vote your ballot. We have 21 yes, 0 nay, 0 absent. We have a majority vote. Moving on, are there any communications?
We have a thank you letter from the Calumet County Fair Board.
All right, we'll place that on file.
And a thank you card from the family of Dan Drewry regarding the parks.
All right, we'll place that on file as well. Is there any public participation? No. All right, there being none, then we'll move on to resolutions. Resolution 2022-12. 12.
Resolution designating a public safety answering point for Calumet County, introduced by the Public Safety Committee.
All right. I need a motion to approve that agenda. So it'd be Supervisor Booty and Supervisor Schwallenberg. And Supervisor Steer, would you speak to this resolution?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This is required Act 26, that we need to provide a point or designate, and the sheriff's department is designated, so they're the ones that can, for the grant program in Calumet County.
Okay.
Any questions, the sheriff's there?
Are there any questions regarding this resolution? If not, please vote your ballot.
It's still under discussion. Now you can.
How come this one
Oops.
doesn't go?
Supervisor Stoffel, would you confirm, and Supervisor Schwallenberg? Thank you. 21 yes, 0 nay, 0 absent. All right, that resolution has been adopted. Moving on to Resolution 2022-13.
Resolution adopting the recommendations of the 2022 Employee Classification and Compensation Study, introduced by the Administrative Services Committee.
All right, I have a motion by Supervisor Booty and a second by Supervisor Steer. And Supervisor Gens, would you speak to this resolution?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Over the past year or so, we have had the Charleston Detman consulting firm looking at the classification of our employees and the salary schedule that goes along with that. And incidentally, our former Human Services Director, Patrick Glenn, who is now employed by the Carlson Detman firm, did the study, or headed up the study. It studied and analyzed the current plan of how we classify our employees and then how we pay them. It dealt with the non-represented, the represented benefited employees, accepting the the Deputy Sheriff Association and the elected officials in the county, and also the county administrator was not included. The Administrative Services Committee recommended implementation of this review and conclusions. There are 19 pay grades, 11 steps in each of the grades, and the Administrative Services Committee recommends adoption of this study and the new salary schedule. Thank you.
Are there any questions regarding this resolution? Seeing none, please vote your ballot. We have 21 yes, 0 nay, 0 absent. It has received a majority vote, so that resolution has been adopted.
That's okay with me.
Moving on to Resolution 2022-14. I have a,
Hold on, you're going too fast.
Relax.
all right.
Could you ask people to check our microphones? We've got some, I just turned one on.
make this a 10-minute meeting.
All right. All right. Would you please check your microphones to see if they're off and if they go on when you speak? Are they working?
Yes. Yeah, just some of them still going on.
Ken, is yours working? Okay. All right. So please turn them off until you are ready to speak.
Yeah.
All right, Resolution 2022-14, resolution authorizing Clean Boats, Clean Waters application for Calumet County, introduced by the Land and Water Conservation Committee.
All right, I have a motion by Supervisor Booty and a second by Supervisor Steer. And Supervisor Hufsberger, would you please speak to this resolution?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This program will fund a minimum of 200 hours for an intern to spend time conducting watercraft inspections at 2 boat landings in the county. This program allows the intern to spend time educating boaters, collecting and reporting data, and report on how new or known aquatic invasive species. This program helps to prevent the introduction of aquatic invasive species and limit the spread of the species that may already be present. You may know of these interns as the blue shirts that are seen on the boat launches interviewing boaters.
Okay. Are there any questions regarding this resolution? All right. Seeing none, please vote your ballot. We have 21 yes, 0 nay, 0 absent, so we have a majority vote, and that resolution has been adopted. Moving on to Resolution 2022-15.
Resolution authorizing a surface water management grant application for Stonybrook Creek, introduced by the Land and Water Conservation Committee.
All right. I have a motion by Supervisor Booty and a second by Supervisor Voigt. And Supervisor Hufsberger, would you speak to this resolution?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This grant application will request funding for the restoration of a channelized section of the Stonybrook by creating meanders, adding in-stream habitat and spawning areas, reshaping eroding banks, and establishing a native buffer along the stream corridor. This project builds on previous successful restoration work that has been done upstream of this location.
All right, are there any questions regarding this resolution? And Supervisor Hufsberger, would you just kind of mention what Stony Brook is?
What Stony Brook is the only trout stream that we have in Calumet County.
Okay. All right, I have a question by Supervisor Schwallenberg.
Not a question, just a comment that if you get an opportunity to go out there to see what they do, it's amazing. I didn't realize until last year that this stream existed. And then when they caught some fish and decided what age they were out there, it's really amazing. And I believe the high school is involved in this too. So thank you.
That is correct. Okay. All right, moving on then. Thank you, Supervisor Hufsberger. Moving on to resolution. What do I have? All right, please vote your ballot. We have 21 yes, 0 nay. We have a majority vote, so that resolution has been adopted. So what do you want to do?
We can present.
Huh?
We can present at least. Or do you want to?
And then we just stop at 9:30.
So you want to present the budget?
Yeah, we can do
Okay,
that.
all right. All right, I need a resolution.
You're on the resolution, but if we're just going to be presenting.
But you don't want the motion, you don't want the motion in the second right away before you present? No?
Well, if we don't.
Okay, got it. That's fine.
Okay, so you just want to discuss, go ahead and just discuss it without the vote for a resolution.
I think it's appropriate to wait in case there's something
All right.
here and they want to move or change, but.
What we're going to do is start discussing the budget, because we will stop at 9:30 for the public hearing, and then we will bring the resolution forward. So, David wants to start. All right. All right. Todd will start out on his budget.
So we're doing this a little out of the normal order. So we're going to present before you have any conversation or discussion about it, allowing any public an opportunity to speak, because we have the hearing at 9:30, but we're a little ahead of schedule. So David and I can provide you with the information on the budget, any updates that we've had. We have a small, short presentation for you, and then maybe we'll be at that point where if we have any public that would like to comment on that prior to you taking any action or having any further discussion on it, seems appropriate. Okay, so basic premise for the budget that we've had for years now has been that we continue to be able to identify priorities as a part of our process and make sure that we can provide efficient and effective services while being accountable to the taxpayers of Calumet County. The budget is the single most important policy document that the county board adopts. And I know we talk about that and mention it every year. I know we've talked about that quite a bit in orientation and training for you as county board supervisors. But as you look at a single policy that you're adopting going into the next year, it clearly sets the direction for the county. So I want to make sure that everybody has had the opportunity to review it, ask questions, and make sure that you're very comfortable with what we're going to be working on and finalizing today. So the budget process, we followed the similar, I should say, process for the 2023 budget as we had in previous years. The department heads develop the budget based on some general guidelines that we provide them in the late summer in preparation for their specific department budgets. This year we changed it a little bit, had requested that department heads speak to us earlier before making position requests, which was a little out of order. Typically, they would put those requests in as a part of their overall budget. This year, we wanted to get a little bit ahead of that, understanding that we were going to be implementing a compensation plan, knowing that health insurance costs were going to be increasing, and us really needing to pay attention to position requests and how they were funded or not funded. So we had quite a few conversations with department heads that were making requests. The ones that really remained in the budget this year were those that had full funding or at least 80% funded positions. We encourage department heads to bring those department budgets to their home committee. So hopefully all of you who are on committees would have had a conversation with department heads, a little bit of understanding regarding what they were providing for us to pull together in the overall budget. The budget process is everything kind of builds up, and then David and I take a look at prioritizing things, because typically we cannot approve everything that comes through as requested. And that's given the fact that department heads are putting together prioritized budgets but not really having the full, complete picture. So that's what we do at that point. And then we meet with them to discuss that one-on-one and things that can remain and things that we may need to adjust out. And they've been excellent, as always, providing us with options, knowing that we can't do everything, given the levy limits that we're under. So the process then is, many of you were there for the Administrative Services Committee. That has worked well for us over the years. Gives you an opportunity for about a month ahead of time to have conversation and questions. Some of you have reached out to me on some specific things. Some have met with me for a while to discuss the questions from cover to cover on the budget, so that's been very good. We're always open to having those discussions so that you can come prepared for today. We have the public hearing, that will be at 9:30, so that's what I had just mentioned, and then the review and approval from the board. What we have done over the years, and I would just like to continue a little bit, is we kind of take a quick look at some economic measures for the county. So many of you, I think all of you, have received that green book. I think it's the 5th edition of the green book. So some of this, if you've looked at it, is familiar, but it's nice to highlight, given the fact that we're moving into the next fiscal year, calendar year, and what the economic measures look like for Calumet County specifically. So we just highlight a few for you, and we're always available for questions or comments regarding what may be in that book, if you have any of those for us. The first economic measure that we're going to talk a little bit about here is the 5-year job growth. So that's the 2016-2021 job growth. And the 5-year changes are presented here in the Green Book to kind of smooth out anything that may occur. Certainly, we know COVID and the pandemic had some major impact on overall economic measures. So having this kind of a look smooths out some of those abnormalities in the job growth. So you can see here that during the 2016-2021, the number of jobs statewide actually had declined by 1%. Most of that decline was in 2020. But you can see here that the 5-year job growth for Calumet County is a significant economic measure, very different than others. And what we have done here in this presentation is include our counties that we relate to kind of in our region. So not necessarily statewide, but those that are surrounding us. So even given the fact that these are our neighbors in our neighboring counties, the economic measure is significant for us as far as job growth. Population change presented here is from 2017 to 2022. And population change can have both economic and service implications. Changes in the number of residents are due to both internal and external factors. Natural population change, of course, is the internal. The difference between the number of births and the number of deaths in a county, of course, is what we're talking about when we mention that internal population change. But the external being the migration in when residents of other Wisconsin counties or other states come to Calumet County has been significant, I would say, at least for the last, well, since I've been here, I think we've been one of the fastest growing counties in the state. Net migration is the difference between the number of residents moving out of the county and the number of residents moving in. And a growing population, of course, spurs local businesses and demand for public services. So that's an important economic measure for us to pay attention to, because as we grow as a community and as counties, what's our government responsibility or need to respond to that in terms of either businesses for economic growth, communities, planning and zoning, roads, highway, and of course human services for those that may need additional services. Our growth was 5.3% for the second year in a row. And in 2021, we were only less than St. Croix. I think they were 7.2, and Dane at 6.5. Growth and equalized value. So the next two slides provide the economic measures by county for growth and equalized value. Equalized values are state estimates of the current market value of all taxable property in the county. Equalized value this year being, is it almost 16%, I believe, has a significant impact on your overall tax rate. as well, so that's something that we can talk about and explain to you a little bit. But the per capita values tend to be higher in counties with more businesses and in those with more vacation property. So I know we've talked about this before, that if you look at the map in the Green Book, there's like at least 8 of the counties with the highest equalized value in the northern portion, which is less densely populated, but certainly has more of that vacation property, like Door County is one, Sawyer County is another. So they have significant equalized value per capita. Of the 10 counties with that, those are, Oneida's another one, Vilas and Florence. And we're just shy of about 94,000 in Calumet County as far as a per capita. And this gives kind of a picture of where we're at. Significant in our region that we are really on the top end of most of these economic measures. Unemployment rate is another one that we take a look at. We have been significantly lower in unemployment rate by county. The unemployment rate is a measure that the rate is calculated as a number of county residents 16 or older who are unemployed and looking for work as a percentage of the total workforce. We've talked about this number as a very positive economic factor, but at the same time, understanding now what the job market is, that a significantly unemployment rate can be challenging for us when it's coming time to look for people to be in our workforce. So that's just an important part to identify, that really, as far as economic measures go with Calumet County, we have some, we benefit. I don't think we're taking credit for that, but we benefit as a county, and it's something very important to our budget process overall to help us set those priorities. And being around much more urbanized, growing counties is something that assists us as well. Just looking at Brown and Fond du Lac, Manitowoc, Outagamie, Sheboygan, and Winnebago are significantly larger than we are, but we also have the benefit of the growth in the northern part of the county that continues to be a positive for us for total overall economic measures. I'll turn it over to you, David, if you want to take it from this point.
Sure. The next slide shows our 2022 net new construction. So net new construction is important because it has a tax levy impact, meaning our tax levy can go up by our net new construction. So you can see for 2022, our net new construction was about 3%, or is 3%, which is very significant. Last year is 1.71. So it allows us to meet growing needs because our value of net new construction kind of fuels the ability to adjust our tax levy going forward. So it is a key statistic that comes out and is analyzed and prepared by the state of Wisconsin for us. Now, if you turn to the next slide, you'll see how we compare to the rest of the Wisconsin counties. So from a perspective of percentage, we are second. So we have the second highest percentage of net new construction. The only county that had a higher is Kenosha. So at our 3%, that percentage, which is what drives our tax levy limit calculation, we are the second highest county in the state. It's really, a lot of what you're seeing is the economic growth that we're seeing. It comes through in the sales tax, it comes through in a number of different factors, but when you look at net new construction, being second in net new construction across the state is very valuable for the county. It illustrates the growth that a lot of those slides that Todd went through kind of reflect. As far as dollar value, we're 18th. That's just because of the size of our county in relationship to the other counties. But being 18th based on our size is pretty strong net new construction in 22. So it's a very key statistic. It really is an important statistic as you look at the economic results of our county. The next slide's just a snapshot of the 23 budget, so just some quick facts. So our expenditures are $74.6 million. Some of that has to do with an increased outlay expenditures as we reviewed with admin services. Our tax rate which is really based on equalized value. So Todd illustrated our growth in equalized value. Our tax rate, decreased to about 4.34% from 4.87. So the state of Wisconsin as a whole had strong equalized revenue or equalized rate increases in property values as the economics of the prior couple of years have impacted house prices and other things. But our tax rate is going down per dollar of equalized value. So what that means is how we spread our tax across municipalities is based on the equalized value. So we spread it across in the net tax that is based on equalized values of 4.34%.
Okay, I'm going to stop now and go through the public hearing. I declare the public hearing on the 2023 budget open. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in favor of the budget? Is there anyone here in the public wishing to speak regarding the budget? Is there anyone here regarding to speak in favor of the budget? Is there anyone here in the public wishing to speak against the budget? Again, is there anyone in the public wishing to speak against the budget? And again, is there anyone here wishing to speak against the budget? Hearing none, and I just want to repeat that this is about, I can't remember how many times, there has never been anyone in the public wishing to speak for or against the budget. I declare the public hearing closed. All right, then we'll move on to Resolution 2022-16, which is a resolution approving the 2023 budget. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion by Supervisor Steer and a second by Supervisor Gleckner. Okay. All right, then we'll continue on with the discussion.
Okay, the next line of the quick budget facts is our total tax levy is 23.7 million, which is about a 3.3% increase, really generally fueled by the net new construction of 3%, plus some of the other levy adjustments. And then our last area is our fund balance applied. So as part of every budget, we do apply fund balance because we budget every position as being fully staffed every day of the year, and we know not every position, there's vacancies throughout the year. We also apply fund balance to compensate for some capital outlays that are one-time expenditures. So in the current year, our fund balance applied is $1,455,000, which is a decrease of 18% over the prior year. And it's really just a factor of, and that's up a little bit because of some of the adjustments that we're going to walk through on the budget between the admin services budget and this budget. Okay. The next page just kind of goes through the 53 cent per thousand decrease in our tax rate based on our equalized value. So it's really, once again, due to the strong equalized value increase in the county. The next looks at our average annual percentage change in tax levy over the last couple of years. You can see it really is a factor of our, monitoring our expenditures, also the fact that we're growing and our equalized value is growing. But you can see the each of the categories we have seen decreasing average annual rates in our tax rate. So it's really the reason the economics is important. So as we grow our economics, it helps us fund the budget and also helps us maintain a tax levy that's either flat or decreasing each year. Good. Then the average annual percentage, you can see is kind of stable. It decreases every year. That decrease is primarily when you get shorter is because of the levy limits that were in place. You can see that, once again, the county continually watches or manages the levy increase, and from a financial perspective is very cognizant of the impact on our levy while maintaining efficient services. So you can see that overall the percentage increase has decreased each of the categories. Now, the next category compares how we compare to our surrounding counties that we are looking at economics. So we're at 4.34. If you look at the higher value counties like Outagamie and Brown, their rate per thousand evaluation is a little bit lower than ours. But when you look at where we fit, we're right in line with the counties around us from a value. All the county tax rates have benefited from the increase in equalized value that we saw on the prior couple slides. And how we compare, what's important is looking at our percentage or allowable debt. So the county is allowed to issue up to 5% of our equalized value for debt. So right now we're at almost 14%. That's primarily due to the recently completed jail project that increased our debt to fund the project. But we're still in very strong financial position. We have, in theory, the capacity to issue 86% more debt than we have right now within the levy limits. We would never want to issue all that debt, but when we're looking at our allowable debt used, we're still in a very strong position at about 14%, and that encompasses the recently completed jail debt. Now, if you look at our debt is pretty consistent at a little under $3 million for every year going forward. So as we talk about our debt service, our levy, we established when we did the jail project, maintaining an equal levy. So for the next, so many years through 2039, our levy is around $3 million, a little under $3 million of debt service. So it's just a real constant. It means our tax levy stays pretty constant. Obviously, this is conditioned on us not increasing additional debt, but the reality is that's where the sales tax helps us fund our capital needs of the county and gets us to where we don't have to bond each year for capital. Many counties are bonding each year for capital. We're pretty stable with our sales tax, able to fund a lot of our capital needs of the county right now. This slide really takes a look at our governmental fund expenditures and says, where's our primary dollars going? Where are we spending our funds? So Health and Human Services, Public Safety, Public Works, our highway, those are the largest sections, and then also our general government. That's really the administrative areas of the county, and also human resources, administration, finance, etc. So you can see how our expenditures are really spread out within our county for 2023. And then from a revenue perspective, it kind of shows how we generate revenue, what revenues offset. And so about 37.5% of our revenues are the property tax that we just talked about. 35, almost 36 is intergovernmental. That really revolves around shared revenues, transportation aids, et cetera. Those are really programs that are funding human service programs, highway programs, et cetera. And they're really passed through either from the federal to the state to us, or just state dollars that are passed through us as part of our budget process. The other large area is charges for services. That represents about 15.4%. That includes not only charges to the public, it also includes, we have a number of contracts within our law enforcement area that is supported by charges to Harrison, for example. So it's really both public charges and intergovernmental charges that offset some of the costs of providing services. The other large area is other taxes. If you remember, in our budget meeting in front of Admin Services, we talked about the city of Appleton is closing a TIF district. We did include some of those funds as part of this budget to represent, to kind of offset some of the cost in 2023. This slide really shows kind of the levy support and general revenue. So it isn't all levy, but it's really what we call general revenues, general shared aids, other revenues that aren't specific to a department. It shows that our sheriff area and our human services, they have a significant component of the expenditures, and their portion of our portion from a county's perspective is the two largest areas, and then finally our debt area. So it kind of shows you kind of how our tax levy is used, what departments need our tax levy to fund their operations. And then here is some budget highlights. Kind of went through them all. The net new construction, 3% compared to 1.71. Our levy limit adjustments allowed for an increase of tax levy for $538,000, which is important. It's really based on our net new construction, and it really also includes the fund balance applied, like we talked about it, and 3 additional positions are included. As Todd indicated, these were funded positions that we were able to include in this year's budget. And also our compensation and classification plan that you just approved is included in this budget right now. Any questions on any of the summary information in the slides? Okay. Now, you should have also received a summary of the changes to the proposed 2023. So when we presented the budget to Admin Services, we were still in the process of finalizing the comp and classification study. And there were a couple of things that arose subsequent to that budget that impacts our total general fund budget going forward. So as you see, there is, I kind of go through some of the significant changes and then entertain any questions anyone has on the budget. But the memo really talks about the first one is compensation plan adjustments. So as we talked about, there were adjustments that impacted the various line departments within the budget. We provided a 10-page summary by budget, by department, just to kind of allow you to identify and see some of the changes. So if you look at the impact of the comp plan in the general fund budget, it resulted in an increase of expenditures of around $2,000. So across all the departments, as we finalize the compensation plan from the amounts that were included in the first budget, the preliminary budget that you saw on the 11th of October, in the general fund it accounted for about a $2,000. So very insignificant across all the departments. It also had some impact on the Health and Human Services and Home Health and Highway. But because those funds are really, revenues are generated off of expenses, we didn't go back, and because of the magnitude of the adjustments, we didn't go back and readjust those line items because they're all within those areas and they're not by department. And once again, very insignificant compensation plan adjustments based on the final plan currently approved. The second area is that we did receive, subsequent to that meeting, a grant from the Fox Wolf Watershed Alliance. This grant has no county share, meaning it is fully funded by the grant. So we have no commitments to have any expenditures subsequent to the grant. It is for about $775,000. We expect it to occur, we have to complete the grant within a 3-year period, so some of these grant expenditures may lapse into the next year as we do the project, but it really is a $775,000 grant, fully offset by the grant. So it has no levy impact, it has no future commitments, so we're not committing to any future dollars. We're just executing the grant that we received. We included it in the final budget just to allow us to include it and to start the process of getting that grant running for 2023. Then the last column, we also removed some exercise equipment from the jail maintenance. So the jail maintenance fund is a fund that is funded by an assessment that is collected by the Clerk of Courts Department. It is to be used for the benefit of the jail. There was some exercise equipment totaling about $7,000 that was in the initial. Subsequent to that meeting and a discussion with the sheriff, that was removed from the budget and is no longer part of the budget, but it was within our jail maintenance fund. Our county sales tax, we had a self-service kayak station that was included in that. Upon further review, it didn't meet the definition of inclusion within our sales tax because we didn't obtain ownership of that station. So we moved the related expenditures because we viewed it as a viable program. We removed the related expenditures and moved that to the general fund with some offset in revenues that we anticipate receiving off of that. So it only had an impact of reducing our county sales tax usage by $15,000. And then there were a couple of budgeted changes within revenues. So our shared taxes, shared revenues decreased from our last year to the final numbers that we received subsequent to the meeting by about $19,443. And our county trunk highways increased, so our general transportation aids, which is based on our reports that we submit to the state of Wisconsin, increased by $126,000. So we adjusted the revenues for those items, and they're included in the final budget. We did have a couple of minor adjustments within the budget of the general fund, and they really relate to, in the maintenance area, there's some expenditures that when I was preparing the budget were part of capital outlay. They did not meet the definition of outlay, so I moved them into a operating expense maintenance account, but my formula missed them. So I'm just adding that was about $11,564. Parks we talked about, land conservation, subsequent to the budget prepared by land, there was another small grant that they received. I put the revenue in, but missed the expenditures in my formula. So that added about $14,000 of expenditure. So all total, very minor adjustments to our budget that you've seen in the October 11th meeting. And then, basically there's 11 pages that kind of identify any changes. So I kind of hit on the highlights, but certainly will entertain any questions anyone has on the budget document that you saw in the October 11th meeting. Any questions anyone has now that you've had it for a month to go through?
Would you please press your request to speak if you have any questions at all? All right. Supervisor Loughran.
Yes, on the jail maintenance fund, removed the exercise equipment. Is there exercise equipment there now?
No.
None whatsoever.
No.
Is there, should there not be?
I guess I'll let that up to the sheriff to decide whether he wants to move forward with it or what type of equipment we will order. It's in the budget in the jail maintenance area if they wish to purchase.
Mark, do you want to answer it? Do you want me to answer it? I mean, we made the decision to remove it. It had been brought up a few different times. If Mark wants to talk about it specifically, what it means for the inmates, but it was our recommendation to take it out, Buzz. Now, what other uses there may be, that would be up to the sheriff and his staff.
So we did have a long discussion between myself and our jail administrator about needs for exercise equipment in the jail. As you know, if you toured the jail, there is a exercise room that is included in the project, which was mandated by the state. So we've had lengthy discussions on the need and what type of exercise equipment to put in there. So when the proposed budget came out, we did put a number in for some weightlifting equipment that was proposed, which after looking at it and talking to some others that have been in the jail setting, such as Pete, my decision was I think we should remove that and look at a different type of equipment. We don't want to bulk these guys up for obvious reasons, so I think what we need to look at in the future is some type of equipment that doesn't include weightlifting equipment and the ability for them to strengthen themselves. It's just defeating what we need to do in that jail for safety purposes. So what we'd like to do as we move forward is to find some type of equipment that is suitable for the jail. And you can't just buy a treadmill and throw in there either. It's all got to be approved by the state jail inspector. It's got to be type of equipment that they can't remove bolts from, things like that, that they'll take and they'll use. So what we're discussing now is potential is putting something simple like a basketball hoop in there. We'll get some cardio workout, which is really what we're looking for them to burn off some steam, if you will. So we're looking at doing something like that at a much lower cost than what we had initially proposed.
Does that answer your question, Buzz?
I think they need something. I honestly think they need some sort of exercise in there. I mean, we've got TVs up to gazoo, but we don't have nothing for them to get their steam off, or they need some sort of exercise, I guess is what I'm getting at.
And I agree with you totally, and that's something we're going to look at as we move into the next year, something more on a cardio basis for them to use. There will be something in there eventually.
Supervisor Steer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to add that many years ago, the state took out all the weightlifting equipment because they didn't want the inmates stronger than the people watching them. Outagamie County took theirs out. They put in a basketball hoop, but I agree with the sheriff that some cardio in with you should be available, but remains to be seen what yet. Thank you.
The problem is anytime you get into that equipment that is specific to that type of setting, it's really expensive. So we're looking at some alternatives, something like Outagamie does. They have a basketball hoop in there, which I think might be sufficient for us at least initially to start out.
All right. Are there any other questions? Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Or if not, please vote your ballot. I have to have a motion. We have that, right? All right. Please vote your ballot. "21 yes, 0 nay. We have received a majority vote and the 2023 budget is approved. All right, moving on. We have 3 ordinances. We've been requested by Supervisor Huffsberger to probably take all 3 of them up at one time. They are in regard to different areas being rezoned. And he would speak to all 3 of them, and we would just take it up with one vote. Is that? All right, we have a motion. All right, Supervisor Booty and a second by Supervisor Gleckner. And Supervisor Huffsberger, would you handle these ordinances, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Planning and Zoning Committee held 3 separate public hearings at last month's meeting. The town boards of Charlestown, Brillion, and New Holstein, from where the petitioners reside, were each in support of and had no objections of the requested amendments. The proposals: Brad Pagel, Kevin Lammers, and the Kleinhunts family have all requested zoning map amendments, and images of each request can be found in their respective supporting materials included in our packet, 18 pages worth. After a public hearing, the committee voted unanimously on each petition to recommend the county board for approval. If you have questions on any of these, Chris Moyer, our department head, is available for questions.
Are there any questions regarding any of these ordinances? Hearing none, please vote your ballot. (21 yes, 0 nay). We have a majority vote. Those ordinances have been approved and adopted. Moving on to supervisor reports. Any supervisors have anything to report of any meetings or seminars they recently attended? And Supervisor Schwallenberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For parks, the walls of our 2 cabins are up, and the roofs will be going on this week, according to Adam. They will be framed in, and then the inside work will be done during the winter by our staff. Our staff are the ones that are putting them up right now. Also, there's landscaping going on around the stone sign that the Parks Department is doing an amazing job on. They've done that job at Ledgeview. This is much more involved at County Park. With the cabins, we're still waiting for the electrical boxes. It's been 18 months. And as the gentleman said, we're still waiting for that unicorn to appear. But Ledgeview finished their caving last weekend for the winter. I'm not sure if is that still due to the bats with the white nose fungus and the bats. So they shut down the caves. Also, in relationship to which Chairman Connors stated, about the green light for veterans that is sponsored by the National Counties Association. We all are either related to someone or have a casual acquaintance or whatever of a veteran from multiple wars. I'm from the Vietnam era where our veterans were not treated very well when they came back, not only with bad language, but they were spat upon. And it's so good to see them honored now. You should be able to find a green light bulb because it is Christmas time and all the Christmas stuff is out right now. Apparently my neighbor thought my green light meant my Christmas decorations are up because his tree is now lit in his living room. So, but related also to the veterans, the 2022 National Veterans Suicide Prevention Annual Report came out. Suicides decreased in 2020 for the 2nd year in a row. This is the most significant decrease since 2001. Yet there were still over 6,000 veteran suicide deaths in 2022. It's good news that the rate has dropped, but it is still a public health crisis requiring actions at all levels of government. We all know that there is a new crisis line for suicide, which is 988. If a veteran dials that number, 988, they have a prompt of 1 that they should press. That's there for the veterans if they need help. And I understand that somebody answers those calls immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Schwallenberg. Supervisor Booty.
Thank you very much. Just to visit one item we had discussed about in the budget. Calumet County had received an increase of $126,000 in general transportation aids as opposed to last year's general transportation aids from the state of Wisconsin. This is due in part to our continued funding of capital improvements in our highway system through our sales tax. It's been more than 5 years now that we have been funding our capital improvements on the highway system with sales tax monies, and that is really beginning to show up in the GTA formula because we're dropping off low spending years. Secondly, last Friday, the 4th of November, I was at the Wisconsin County Association Public Works and Transportation Steering Committee. There we've had a discussion with both WCA staff and staff from the Wisconsin Transportation Development Association. We discussed roundtable discussions that WTDA had around the state and kind of engaged in our own little roundtable. From the Wisconsin Counties Association, as you probably saw in last month's WCA magazine, transportation issues that the WCA is going to be looking for in the upcoming legislative term is going to be a 10% GTA increase and increasing the local road improvement program supplemental from $100 million to $200 million. We then also discussed structures in the state of Wisconsin that are not on the bridge program, that is any bridge or culvert that is less than a 20-foot span. Currently, only 39 of the counties in the state have inventories on that because this is not in the bridge program. They are not required to have inventories. However, we are asking, one of the items in the upcoming budget would be to fund an inventory of all structures on all county, village, city, and town systems. It's anticipated that, just extrapolating from what data we do have, there might be up to 23,000 such structures that are not in the bridge system currently. And if we don't have them in the system, we don't know what shape they're in. So this is kind of a measure of, we need to know what we have so we know if we have a problem or if we don't have a problem. And if we do have a problem, well, then we're going to have to ask for money to get it fixed. And that is all I have to report on those issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Booty. I have just a couple of things. You may have received an email from the Wisconsin Counties Association regarding the Ambassador Program. The Ambassador Program was probably started about, maybe 8-9 years ago on my time as president of the Wisconsin Counties Association. What it is they have several delegates from each county, goes to Madison on a particular day. This time it'll be January 25th, April 12th, and October 18th, where we sit down face-to-face with our representatives from Calumet County, and usually Sheboygan County is in there as well. There is a application that needs to be filled out, and then I will have to approve that. We usually have maybe 6 people have gone to these, and we sit down and we arrange a meeting ahead of time for our legislators. I think it's been very beneficial. We've been able to tell them our side of the story and what's happening in Calumet County and how they can help us on various legislation. I already have 4 applications, so 1 or 2 more I will accept. Also, the April 12th one is the Human Services Day, and that always proves to be such a very large gathering for that meeting. Also, I've been talking with WCA and Kyle Christensen and Mark O'Connell regarding levy limits. You've probably seen some emails coming across from the various counties to the north and that regarding levy limits. Is there something we can do? Is there something that we can take away from the levy limits? And I'm just going to read this because they have a proposal set up, and so far they will have a meeting with Senator Lemieux and Robin Voss on November 15th. But in listening to them, they have talked to some of the counties associations, the League of Municipalities, and other governmental entities, the townships. And this is what they're kind of like to propose. It's kind of centered around the sales tax. There would be no change in the levy limits, which they won't even talk to us about, which we know that from long ago. What they would do is dedicate 1 penny of the state's 5-penny sales tax to local government, counties, towns, villages, and cities. They would eliminate shared revenue, expenditure restraint, and the personal property tax. Each local government's revenue from these 3 items would be replaced with a new sales tax money. The thought process here is that as the sales tax grows annually, so too would the county's revenue stream. After replacing sheriff revenue, expenditure restraint, and personal property, there is approximately $500 million remaining from the sales tax to be distributed to local governments. What they are doing is they're talking to the towns and the leagues and how this could be allocated. In short, the tentative plan would tie a portion of local government revenues to the economy, so they would grow annually, and we would be infusing an additional $500 million statewide to local government. So this is kind of what they're talking about and working on, and I will be in touch with them after the November 15th meeting, as I sit on the executive board of WCA, and so we'll keep you informed as to how things are going through. All right, Supervisor Diedrich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple more comments about the WCA Steering Committee on Public Works and Transportation. I also attended, and one other area that the group talked about was transportation funding. As most of you know, transportation is funded primarily through the gas tax, also through licensing, your annual license, and then vehicle registration. That's been a problem because as cars become more fuel efficient, obviously you don't use as much gas and you don't pay as much gas tax, but you still drive miles on the highways. I mean, that's the end problem. Madison, as Chairman pointed out, is not interested in any new taxes, so that's always been a problem for getting these things funded. A new problem on the horizon is electric vehicles. Electric vehicles don't have to pay gas tax because most of them don't use gas. So it's coming, all right? Every 50 miles on the state interstate system is going to have a charging station starting in 1923. When that project gets rolling out, they're going to have these charging stations. But right now, the legislature has to address the issue of how charging stations are going to be run, because currently the only people who can charge for electricity are utilities. So your Quick Trips and any other place cannot charge for charging stations. So anyway, that has to be addressed in this upcoming session. Along with that, we talked about ways we could attack the electric vehicle issue. Well, obviously, if you charge so much per kilowatt hour, that would be like equivalent to gas tax. And it makes sense if they can get that in. It'll be easier getting it in when there are far fewer electric cars than 10 years from now when there are many more electric cars. So they need to do it now and get it in there. You've probably also heard about people talking about, and not just in Wisconsin, but throughout the nation, people keeping track of miles they drive and then paying a tax on the miles they drive. It sounds kind of, I don't know, invasive or Newellian or whatever, Orwellian, but when you think about electric vehicles, you could do that. In other words, when I apply for my license plate renewal, I would put down I drove 8,000 miles the past year, and I would have to then put in so much per mile for transportation. Well, of course, I'm not going to be honest, like everything. I'm going to say, I only drove 7,000 miles. They're not going to catch me. Well, yeah, but when I trade that vehicle in or when I sell that vehicle, guess what? I have to report the odometer reading. So that's a catch-up point. In other words, if I've been unfair all along, that's fine. They'll catch me, at the end when I trade or sell the car. So we need to get these things in front of the legislature and get something in place And I'm not sure what's going to get in there or not. They did talk about what might pass, and because right now the state of Wisconsin has a significant revenue or excess, they're thinking they can get some general fund dollars for transportation. But that's not a long-term solution. So just be aware these things need to get done. Support your legislatures when these things come before them, because right now, we were basically told that no new taxes are going to go, being implemented. So they have to find creative ways to do this without having a new tax, so to speak, anyway. But it's coming, so we need to deal with it. Thank you much.
Thank you, Supervisor Diedrich. You have the county administrator's report. Are there any questions regarding that report? All right, if not. All right, our next regular meeting then will be December 20th at 9 o'clock a.m. Or at 8:30. Excuse me, that's error, 8:30. Excuse me, it's 9 o'clock. We did change the rules. All right, I have a motion for adjournment. And I declare the meeting adjourned. Have a safe trip home. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone, and thank you for your attendance today.